I made the adjustments to the linkage on the wing, the Z84 race wing, to go out and test this Byme-D gyro again. But I already had the control linkage attached to the bottom hole of the control horns on the control surfaces. So mechanically, that's the least amount of travel I can get with the control horn linkage. With the servo arm linkage, I also had the linkage connected to the bottom arm of the servo. So I moved the linkage on both control surfaces from the bottom hole, the most outer hole on the servo arm, up 2 holes. Okay, so and then increased my dual rate to get roughly the same amount of movement of the control surfaces that I had before I moved the linkage. So I went from 60% dual rate on the ailerons to 100% dual rate on the ailerons, and I have just 1 millimeter less travel than I had before on the ailerons at 100% dual rate. On the elevators, I went from 40% dual rate to 75% dual rate, and I have 1 millimeter more travel on the elevators than I had before I adjusted the linkage. So I got the control surface movement as close as I could get it with what I had before, to get as close to 100% dual rate as I could. So going from 60% dual rate to 100% dual rate on the ailerons, and going from 40% dual rate to 75% dual rate on the elevators is a lot of additional travel on that servo arm compared to what it was before I adjusted the linkage. So my hope is that having that additional movement on the servo arm is going to either greatly lessen or completely eliminate that oscillation that I saw in the first test flight with the swing with the Byme-D gyro in it. So anyway, it is ready to go out and launch again. We'll take it out to the field and see if this mitigates the oscillations that I saw from the gyro during the first test flight session, and then I'll meet you back here after the flight. So I will see you out at the field.
Well, let's get this Z84 race wing back in the air with the Radiolink Byme-D gyro and see if those adjustments will prevent the oscillations launching. Alright, get back out of the throttle here. Have it in full stabilized mode. I'm going to bring it through here and see if we have any oscillations. I don't see anything yet. Let's bring it through here again and throttle it up a little bit and see. That's looking pretty good so far. So far, I do not see any oscillations out of it. Got to give it a wide swing here. Oh, watch the scrub, Tony. Do not run it into the scrub. Alright, that looks pretty darn good, guys. I didn't see any oscillations going through there at full throttle in stabilization mode. It is keeping it nice and straight and level when I center the stick. That is sweet. Okay, so now let's bring it back through here and put it into wind and mitigation mode. and bring it through here and do a little bit of a speed run and see if we have any oscillation. Well, you know what? Right now it's looking like increasing the throws on the servos, you know, the swing on the servos, has definitely taken care of the oscillations. How about that? That is fantastic. I think if it was going to produce any oscillations, I would have seen it by now. Looks like I still have a good roll rate. That was not full stick deflection, and that was just at cruising speed there. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So, looks to me like we are successful. How about that? That is absolutely cool. Sweet. Other than correcting for the wind, I have seen no oscillations. That was full throttle. Alright, so I guess that's the way I'm going to start setting my planes up, just in case. Just in case. Just in case I decide to put a gyro in them. That is definitely the best way to set it up. Get the maximum movement on the servos. Swing on the servos while getting the amount of control surface deflection that you need. If you can maximize that, then I don't think you're going to have any problems with oscillations from the gyro. That is fantastic, guys. That is a successful test. Make sure we don't have anybody coming here. I'm just now starting to get my haptic. So I am going to put it back into full stabilization mode. Slow down, because it really glides well. Oh, that was sweet. That was sweet. Success, success. So that is what was causing the oscillations in this wing.
Alright, so that completely eliminated the oscillations that I saw in the first test flight, and the oscillations in the first test flight were pretty pronounced. You could see it from a long way off. So I took 8 lipos out there with me this morning, and I put all 8 of those packs through this wing. And I really put it through its paces, and the last 3 flights I put on it, it was pretty darn gusty out there. So I also had a lot of testing in wind mitigation mode. Wind mitigation worked fantastic. I highly recommend the Byme-A and the Byme-D gyro. So setting the aircraft up so that I have the control surface movement that I want to have the plane handling precisely the way I want it, while getting the maximum amount of movement out of that servo arm, will mitigate any oscillations that might arise from this gyro. I couldn't believe the difference between Flight 1 and Flight 2 on this, just making those changes. Now, I discovered one other thing while I was out there. I noticed that when I increased the dual rate on the elevator from 75% dual rate to 80% dual rate to give me a little more elevator in reserve, and I had already had the ailerons at 100% dual rate. What I found, since you set this up as a standard 3-channel plane, you know, aileron, elevator, and throttle, and the gyro does the internal mixing for the elevons. When I increase the dual rate on one axis, it affects the dual rate on the other axis as well, and I assume that's because of the internal mixing. So when I increase the dual rate on the elevator, it also made the aileron more responsive, which I did not want. So the way that I fixed that, and I wanted to make you aware of this. So I increased the elevator dual rate from 75% to 80%. And then when I found out that the responsiveness of the ailerons had also increased, I went back into the dual rate for the aileron, and I reduced it from 100% dual rate to 95% dual rate. I decreased the dual rate on the aileron by the same amount that I increased the elevator, and then the ailerons were handling the same again, and I still had additional movement on the elevator to give me some in reserve. So you know, that's something to consider with the Byme-D gyro. If you're making an adjustment on dual rate on one axis, you may find that you need to decrease it on the other axis in order to keep everything balanced. But that worked for me, so I've got it completely tuned out now. It's handling exactly the way it was handling before I made the linkage adjustment, and it's flying nice and straight and level and flat, nose to tail and wingtip to wingtip. So I'm extremely happy with it. The Byme-D gyro in full stabilization mode makes it really easy to launch this, even by the wingtip. And then the wind mitigation mode is awesome because I had some pretty good gust out there, and it held its line and tracked extremely well. So anyway, highly recommend it. It works absolutely awesome. I've only got 2 of the Byme-D gyros. I'm going to be getting more of those as well, because I have several L1 only aircraft. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.